What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a sequel to a film that I actually just reviewed recently, and that film was The Strangers. As I said in that review, I had never seen the original Strangers before, even though I worked at a movie theater when it was originally released. I watched it because I was a big fan of the director's other work, and I thought it was good. I thought that it was, a quiet, nuanced horror film for the most part that built up really great atmosphere and suspense, but had a lot of stupid jump scares cut into it as well that kind of took me out of it a little bit. But overall, I think it's an effective horror movie that works really well. And a while ago, there was an announcement that there's going to be 3 new Strangers films that are all going to come out within the same year in 2024, which is incredibly interesting because I feel like the first film gets talked about a lot, but I don't see this as one of those iconic properties that people are just really itching for new material. But I guess there's enough demand for it that they decided to make more. And so today I'm going to be talking about the sequel to the original Strangers, which in reading reviews at the time that it was released, I know that it was relatively mixed the way that it was received, but I was interested enough because of the first film to check it out. So today I'm going to be discussing the film The Strangers Pray at Night. The Strangers Pray at Night is directed by Johannes Roberts. A family's road trip takes a dangerous turn when they arrive at a secluded mobile home park to stay with some relatives and find it mysteriously deserted. Under the cover of darkness, 3 masked psychopaths pay them a visit to test the family's every limit as they struggle to survive. So, didn't really know what to expect with this other than the 3 characters from the original Strangers. Obviously, this was put in the hands of a very different director, one who's directed, I think, 2 shark horror movies and a Resident Evil adaptation, movies I've not seen. So I didn't know what the tone or the style was going to be like going into this film. And I will say, I enjoyed it. I don't think it's perfect. I definitely think it's a downgrade from the original, but I think there's things to appreciate about it. And I'll break it down a little more when I talk about the film as a whole. So The Strangers Pray at Night, we're introduced to Kinsey, played by Bailee Madison, and she lives at home with her mother and her father and her brother. Her mother is played by Christina Hendricks. Her father is played by Martin Henderson, and Louis Pullman plays her brother. And they're all about to go on this trip because apparently Kinsey got into some trouble of some kind, and her parents are sending her to a boarding school, and she is not happy about it at all. She is very distraught about the situation, and they're going to visit this family as kind of a last hurrah together as a group before she goes off to school. There's a lot of tension between Kinsey and her mother. You can tell there's a lot of back and forth. They stop at a diner early in the film and get into this very heated conversation. And so the director does a really nice job building up those family dynamics at the beginning. Well, shortly after they arrive at this trailer park, there is literally no one there. The place looks completely abandoned. They go into the place that they're supposed to stay. Shortly after that, there's a knock at the door, and if you've seen the original, it's the woman from the first movie asking if the same woman is home. They say no, so we immediately as an audience know here they are. The 3 strangers are going to start stalking and terrorizing this family. So you ask yourself, is this going to be a repeat of the first film? Is this going to be a quiet, nuanced horror film where a lot of the scares are people creeping in the shadows and building that anxiety and tension the way the first film does? And the simple answer to that question is no, it's not that movie at all. This is a much more in-your-face homage to the 70s and 80s era of slasher films. There's a lot of synth music in this. There's some neon in moments. They definitely take a more brutal, in-your-face approach, which has its fun moments. I do think that it is really entertaining, the route that they take. I think the film does a great job, similarly to Bertino's The Strangers, in building up these characters and making you care about these characters so that when they're put in peril, there's a reason to give a shit. I think so many problems with a lot of slasher films is even if you don't add a deep emotional core, you have to give us something to care about with characters when you start killing them off one by one. Otherwise, it's just okay, well, maybe I can appreciate practical effects or something of that nature. But this movie does a really good job at building up those character relationships, and I liked that a lot. There's some cheesy moments in this. I'm not the biggest fan of when the people in the masks speak. I think that it's kind of corny. Their dialogue in this while in the first film it comes off as very ominous and strange because literally they speak like one line of dialogue the entire movie, which makes their intentions a little bit more horrifying. In this, it's like when they speak, it doesn't work as well for me. I felt like some of the dialogue, especially that comes out of their mouth, was a little bit corny, and not even in a way that feels like that 70s or 80s era of slasher. I think maybe because my brain was in the spot of like, okay, this is nothing like what the first movie was, that I couldn't get it. I couldn't read it as like as okay, it's trying to be schlocky. Like it didn't feel that way, and so that was unfortunate. I do think the kill sequences in this are really good. I think that the setting is cool. I really like this like abandoned trailer park. I thought it was a really neat place to set a film, and I think all the performances are really good, especially from the family members. I thought Christina Hendricks was fantastic, probably the standout in the film. She's always fantastic in whatever she shows up in, and I think the family dynamic between these characters is established really well to where when the peril starts to happen, even just the cues and their facial expressions between one another, you can feel that bond and that the peril they're in and trying to fight for one another's safety. I think they did a really good job at establishing that. A problem I do have in this movie though is the pacing. It has kind of a chaotic pacing in a way that I feel like it's just ready to rush to the finish line. There are some really solid moments in this movie. There's a scene at a pool that I feel like a lot of people talk about. There's a scene towards the third act on the back of a truck bed that definitely has its like homage to Texas Chainsaw Massacre moment that I appreciated. But for the most part, I feel like the problem I had with this movie is you were just getting from point to point to point to point to point to try to just rush to the finish line, where there's a lot about the original film that felt like it really took its time to build that tension and that atmosphere. And I just missed that a lot when I watched this movie. And that's not to say I don't like chaotic, in-your-face slasher movies, because I 100% do. And I think there are moments in this that pay homage to that type of a film in a way that really works, but it doesn't really have the same type of effect as the original film. I think, you know, it's one of those movies too that I don't feel like is super memorable. Like there's some cool scenes in it, but I think overall, story-wise, I would definitely have the original seared in my head more than this one. But it's not to take away from the fact that I did have a lot of fun watching this movie, and I think it's a worthwhile sequel. It's not better than the original. It's definitely a different vibe and a different atmosphere than the original. And I always respect directors taking a risk and trying to do something different. And I think if you're looking for a sequel to a horror movie that is entertaining and engaging, you could do a lot worse than The Strangers Pray at Night. So if you've seen The Strangers Pray at Night, did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was a lot of fun. I think there's definitely problems with it. I don't think it's as good as the original, but it's still a worthwhile sequel that's a nice addition into this world or universe or whatever they're trying to create with it. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.